Do you want it back? No, right here. Right, larger. Okay. I'm going to draw my horizon line or eye level line. And I think I'm going to place it somewhere about here. That's fine. I want to parallel. Try to keep myself out of the photo. It's a little challenging. Do work in pencil. Establish everything. So vanishing points, that's going to be critical. Oh, one thing I can do is get a ruler and place it onto an edge and get a sense of where I want to put some of these vanishing points. So for my sake, I think I'm going to have one very close to right, just like maybe right there. Just, you know, I might as well just have it go all the way to the edge. That's such a minor difference. It doesn't even matter. So I'm just going to go right where that ends. That's my vanishing point, is the edge of that paper. And I'm going to use the same for the other side. So my vanishing points are here and here. Okay. I want to determine, it's like, okay, what corner on this, where am I going to place one of these corners? Because we're looking at the blocks of the building from a corner view, not from the side, not from the front, but from the corner. So I'm going to determine where one of these primary corners are. Like, what about this corner here? Where do I want that? And my determination is going to say how long this piece is. Where I place this on my page, if I place it here and I say it's that long, well, what's the length of the rest? It's like, it's not going to work. So here's what I think I need to do is establish some lines in advance to guide my decision. So you can just kind of build arbitrarily. It doesn't mean anything's going to go there, but it helps me understand. And by doing this, it helps me visualize the sky plane where all these objects are. You don't have to measure these lines, but they all should converge. You should be careful. It's like I notice here, it's like I was off on one of those lines, so I'm going to try to adjust it. I don't think I have to go any higher than that based on the building. It really doesn't go any higher than that. What about the other direction? We're going to do the same. If you do not have a long enough ruler, you won't really be able to do this assignment. And speaking of long rulers, there's my long ruler. This is good ruler right here. Steel edge, cork on the back, just so non-slip, and it's 24 inches long. And you're going to be working on a long piece of paper, so yeah, you'll need that. And these lines need to go higher based on these planes here. So I think I'll start here and go downwards. Don't use a heavy hand when you make these lines. Let these be, I'm having to push harder so you see them on the camera, harder than I would like. Typically, they'd be very faint.
Is it also recommendable to use like a 6H pencil to get those really light lines?
Yeah, I think that would work. Might be a little too hard because sometimes if you choose a pencil that's very hard, you end up having to push down harder than you want for it to be visible. And then you're putting indentations into the paper. And it leaves little grooves throughout the paper. So when it comes time to shading, those grooves will become deeply pronounced. They'll end up being these typically like light lines running throughout your whole piece. So be careful how hard you press down with your pencil. There was an illustrator, she did pastel work. She utilized that in her technique often. Okay. Let's see. So I'm going to establish some verticals. All of the corners in a 2-point perspective are vertical, and they're all parallel. We're not doing a 3-point perspective where they converge. They're all parallel. All other planes, right? For instance, that plane and that plane, which would be would follow this convergence. Okay, so I think what I want to establish is this point here and this point here. So I think one thing that's going to help me is I need to see this. And it's like, do I go any? I don't dare go. I'm trying to look for proportions. Before I decide this edge, I think I want to define this edge first, and then the next one, and then that one. That's going to make a difference because this distance is a certain percentage of this distance here. I want to get those percentages fairly accurately. Their proportions, their relationship. So let's go with this mark here. And another thing that's helpful is if I think my drawing area, I'll say I'm going to limit my area that I draw to here. The building needs to fit within this space. That's my guess. So I'm saying that's the edge of my canvas. Obviously not the edge of my paper. And I'm going to look at those proportions. Let's say around there. It's about a third. If I break it up, it's roughly thirds. So if I'm saying I can divide this into thirds. Okay, that's pretty accurate. I'm taking a measurement. You could see how I'm doing this with my thumbnail. I eyeballed it and I'm very close. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to go straight up from this point and establish this line. I'm going to say that line is going to go here. Okay. And it may be helpful for you to say that line is going to be, I'm going to call it A, And you can make a little mark on your piece and call it A. That one. So you have a reference. So as you progress, you can fall back on that reference because you get a little lost as you go on these pieces. Good. So that really helps me. I need to now, I think, establish the height of that corner. What's the height of that corner? Would that be a good spot? Or do you want to go a little taller? It's like, what's the highest point? That's the highest point. So that means that's going to go a little bit taller there. How high can I go? I think that's pretty comfortable. So I'm just going to go with that. So that's this point here, it falls back into space, which means it has to go towards the vanishing point on the left. There's that. What's this thickness? So you could see the thickness of this plane right here, the side of that stone wall structure. I'm going to kind of evaluate the proportions and try to match the proportions with the position of my triangle and looking at these proportions here and then looking at those proportions. But I also realize I need to, before I put that line down, more accurate would be, where does this fall? So I'm going to put that first. Comfortably fall. I'll just say right around here. So I'm just going to draw a line here. That line indicates this edge here. I'll just call that B. The far left edge is, I'm going to say that's B right there. I know the height of it. I'm going to say that's the height. So one thing that's going to help me is to draw a line back to the other point to kind of establish this block. It's going to help me visualize proportions. Don't have to go through the whole thing. That's good. Okay. So that's this block right here is this block right here. And where does this block fall within this distance from here to here? Well, I can measure it. I think we'll just go with this tool is fine. My fingernail, I go from here to here and then up again. It's almost dead center on it. So I'll go with that. I'm not worried about these rock formations. You do not have to put them in. You can take them out if you want and imagine what's behind them, but it might be a little difficult to imagine. So keep them in if you like. So halfway is roughly here from this point to this point. Halfway is about here. So that means that large mass is going to fall somewhere about there. And I want to get, how tall is it, right? Well, what's going to help me is this distance here and that distance. Proportions of that rectangle. So I'm going to gingerly put something in because I'm not too clear about how tall that has to be. Oh, wait, and let's do another measurement. So, okay, use our old trick. I'm going to say, okay, I'm using my pencil mark and I'm gonna say, okay, there is that distance. What is that relative to these others here? So, right, there's 2. Okay, we're using a unit of measure to establish. What about if I go down 1 and then down again? Okay, so that helps me. That's really clear. If I go from this point here straight up, it is 2 of that distance. So I've made an evaluation of the space. So now I'm going to draw that rough approximate thickness right here. And then so I said 2 of those. I want to double check was positive bump. It is 2. Okay, it is 2. So that's from there to there to there. That's 2 of those. So that's my height. I'll take that measurement. I'll just tick mark it right there. Double check. Good. Good. Okay. So now that's a pretty good estimate of where it should be. Okay. It cuts in a little deeper over here. So we need to cut it in a little bit. And it cuts back. And I'm going to use that point. I think that's pretty accurate. I'm looking at the proportion of this square. I could go a little further out, so I will, but not much. And of course, we go straight up. And now we're going to go back. And then back again. Yeah, I'm going to say it's roughly this thick. And I'm going to draw the back underside of that plane based on where those 2 intersect. And I need to have a longer triangle because I want to be accurate in terms of its direction. It needs to converge to this point. This is where your students often make the mistake because they don't converge to the same consistent points each time. They start converging into other areas and sometimes not even on the horizon line. I know this is challenging for some students from my own experience teaching this course. For those of you who are really struggling with it, just do your best. Not everybody's going to get this. Most of you will, but some won't, and I don't want you to feel badly that you don't. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to draw the underside just to complete my little cube here. Okay, there we go. That helps. Any questions? All right. let's take like a, oh gosh, 15-minute break. It's 10:23, so that means we'll be back here at 2:35 and we'll continue with this demonstration. I'm going to pause the recording. Okay.
Professor, I had a question.
Sure.
For the 1 point or the 1 point view homework assignment, are we allowed to use color, or do you just want it to be shaded with normal pencils?
Did you say, are you allowed to use color?
Yes, like to enhance the shading, I guess.
Well, have you worked in color?
Sorry, what?
Have you worked in color before?
No.
I recommend you stay. If you are you thinking of what kind of medium do you want intended to work in color in?
I was intending to do pretty light, and then for the shadowing, maybe a darker hue of that color.
Medium, I mean like paint, colored pencil, marker.
I was thinking probably colored pencil.
I'm sorry, colored pencil. Is that what you said?
Colored pencil, yes.
Here's what you can do. Work monochromatically. And by that, I mean, stick with one hue, which would be possibly an all blues or all greens, okay, or all grays. I know that's, you might not think of that as a hue. It's too neutral to fall into any one hue, but monochromatically would be better.
Okay, yeah. So for example, if I were to use blue, it wouldn't matter what shade so long as it was the same color.
Right, you would rely on how dark the shade is to create contrast.
Okay, perfect.
Okay?
Thank you.
That works. That goes for others if you're interested. I'm fine with that. It's easier to work in color when you're working monochromatically because it limits a huge component of color. You're isolating everything to a single color, so it forces you to create contrast by making lights and darks of the same hue or the same blue if you're working in blue. So you make light blues, dark blues, and you'll have a much easier time having a successful piece. Students who are new to color, it takes years of training to be able to recognize different values of different hues. It's much more difficult. Okay. Yeah, not something for beginners. Let's continue. All right, so I've established some landmarks. This is really helpful. I've established this position, this height, this position of this corner relative here. So if I want things to be in proportion, and I do, I'm going to now establish this thickness here. And if I'm looking at this to here, this is considerably thicker. I'm going to say roughly about there. Make things parallel. That feels about right. So I'm going to stick with that. And I want to discern that corner right there. And where does that fall relative to here? Looks like it's lining up just roughly about there. So that's what I think it's going to be. Okay. There's another little protrusion coming out here, but I'll hold off on that for now. I'm going to focus more on this, and this big piece is what I really want to establish. I'm looking at this line continues in that direction. It can intersect where this line is. And where they intersect is somewhere around this point here. Wait a second, do I have that right? Where do they intersect? I'll take a measurement. So looking for something to compare it to. Okay, so that's my comparison. So right about there is where I'm saying it intersects. Right. And you're not going to be able to exactly get it to match every time because your vanishing points are in different positions as well as some other placement. So you do have to make adjustments. Here's another measurement I want to take. I want to take this distance from here to here. That's really helpful. So that, so a little less than half of this, a little less than half of that, just something like that. Where did I measure that from? I see it's hard to keep track of where I'm doing my measurements from because I'm doing multiple measurements. Okay. All right. Is that right? How about this measurement? That I know. I'm going to, so this distance from here to here. I'm a little bit too deep on mine here, so I need to adjust that. I went too deep. And that's too deep, then this one's a little too deep too, so I'm going to adjust that. And I can't get an accurate angle unless I go up here. And now I can. Okay, that's better. Eraser shield so I don't mess everything else up. All right, better. That's what I'm going to go for. So I'm going to say this is my corner for that block, straight up and down. And see where that is relative to the other. So it's too high, so it's something like that. No, I'm not too high. Take that back. This corner, see, this is what I want to look at this corner here. Look at that. Look at this line. It splits right down the middle of that. So that's my telltale sign right there. You're going to have a process of discovery when you work on this thing, just like I just did just now, right here. That's defining this line right here. Tells me that one, that bottom of it right there. That's the bottom. So that. It's really helpful in knowing that's my bottom. I can get its height. And this line's a little confusing to you, so I'm going to get rid of that. Take a measurement. I'm going to just judge something here. Yeah, it's greater than that. So I do have some distortion. So I'll just kind of, I'm going to go with what I drew. It's pretty good. Maybe a tiny bit higher. Not much. Okay. And now we're going to head back. Let's put in that vertical corner. I think one thing that's going to help me determine is maybe this angle here. So I'm going to line this up and see how it's intersecting. I do have different vanishing point positions, so I can't rely on that solely. I'm going to go with my gut, my eyeball, which is saying somewhere around here. Okay. And now we're heading back. Draw the left plane. And the bottom corner of that left plane, or edge of that left plane. And then it's like, I'm going to say it does something. And I'm noticing, my proportions don't look right. Look, see, look at that. Say this is like square-like. So that means I need to make an adjustment. This height needs to change. Or is that because I have more severe foreshortening? And so it's getting shortened because of the position, relative position on my vanishing point. Interesting. So I need to make a decision. I'm going to go with this other line and make an adjustment there. I think I like that relationship, that net, so I'm going to keep it. Okay. That cuts back in this from this point, from the bottom of that. Seeing the underside of that corner. Okay. We've got another interesting left side plane of this brick wall that goes all the way up here and then down here and holds and supports this structure. That line is roughly here to here to there to there, roughly about here. Okay. And then it cuts back the other direction. It's supporting it. Actually, it cuts this way first. It has to have a ledge to sit on. And then you can see my anything about this, anything about that. Yeah, I'm going to go a little higher so it cuts back like so. and the edge of that wall thickness. It's pretty narrow. Okay. Now, let's establish this shape right here. Where does that line up relative to this? So if that shape's here, falls back, look at that, it lines up almost with the corner, but I'm in a slightly different perspective. So I'm going to eyeball it relative to this shape here. And there. Yes, I put that here. Actually, I think it should go around there. Something like this. Okay. And then we're going to cut back. And then strengthen that point. And just to clarify things a little bit, I'll remove this diagonal cutting across that plane so it's not so confusing. And I'll remove some of these so they're not so confusing. Okay. And this big mass, that's going to be good to put in. Of course, this is nice. So let's put in that little thin roof piece right here. And that roof. Back end of it first. It seems to be lining up somewhere around there. Do that right? No, I did not do that right. That's right. Oh, cool, cool. I see my mistake now. This line goes here. I missed that line. Okay. Okay, that's better. Okay. And then we have this other strong form there. So let's put that in. Try to establish its thickness. It's not as thick as the others. Almost. It's all about relativity, so I'll just go with that for now. And then eyeballing it. How does that feel? Height relative to that, pretty close, so maybe a little further back. Okay, and then I'll just cut it back. Cut it back again, bottom, front. And then relative proportions, we're going to say something like so. And then it cuts back. Okay. Okay. Questions before I go any further? Did have a cup of water. Be right back.
Just a quick question for the 2-point perspective. I know you said that we could shade it, but can we just shade it so like the blocks that are next to each other, they're like different colors? So that we can, because when I was doing the 1-point perspective, I was stacking some of the blocks, and I got confused, so I just made them look like different colors, so different shades. Like I just shaded so one of them was a little bit darker than the other. Can I just do that instead of like
Absolutely,
making it
that's
look
fine.
like shading?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Shading helps clarify things. Go ahead. Now you're welcome to do that. I just didn't make it an absolute that you had to do it for that. Okay. All right, and I want to make a stab at where this ends, this block ends. I'll say roughly about here. And if that is the case, then let's go back in space from here, this point where that line intersects this line, that's my corner, and back to this vanishing point. Okay. And at some point, it's helpful to remove some of those grid lines or the radiating convergent lines. So it can get a little distracting and confusing with everything. Can't tell your head from tails. Again, you're working on a large sheet of paper, not this small 8.5 by 11. Okay. Getting my bearings. There's this. How about this other supporting block? A little hard to see what's going on in here. Try to photograph. Can't clearly see. There's some supporting structures kind of at a diagonal in here, so it's different. But let's focus on the other pieces for now. I'm going to add some clarification to this area here. There's these thin little roof structures, like I have that roof structure here, and another one up a little higher, right around this area there. Cuts in a little deeper. It's pretty high, that roof. It's very high near the top. It goes beyond this point here a little bit. And then of course we cut back. and cuts back again over here. Just to make things a little clearer, I'm just going to shade this in so it's less confusing for you. These are the undersides. Using this as a mask to shield so I get a very clean, crisp edge, like so. And I'll do the same over here. Kind of go in the same direction as the convergent vanishing point. Okay. And of course, one more. He's already suggested the light source on here and the casting the shadows. I'm not going to put that down. I'm just going to keep things simple. When I say he, Frank Lloyd Wright. Okay, so there's that roof, has a little thickness to it, which I did not include yet. There's some work here that it's ever so subtle. It's like right there. A little bit of a outcropping. Okay. That's fine. That ends right here. This corner is really strong. I need to make sure I get that accurately. Okay. And the thickness to that is something like this. I'm going to drop it down instead of raise it. Okay. And there's this block here. I'm going to put that in. So a little gap above. Line it with the vanishing point, get it in position. It's about right there. It's thinner, it's more narrow than that. Extrudes probably about so far, but not much beyond that point. And then it's pretty small. this point here, go back. And then down, and then back. And base, and it's really tiny. Yeah, let's go with that. There's a cut into this opening here. So the height is roughly about here. I'm going to cut back. And then it goes down. I'm going to say roughly here. And then this is the underside cuts back. Bring some clarity to this here. And these blocks, I want them to be more precise and clear. Okay. And just to provide a little more clarity, I'm going to put in some of these kind of stone masonry lines. They do converge. And so their patterns would get narrower and narrower the further away from the camera. And there's some variation because they use a different thickness of stone and that they're not all consistently spaced. And I'm not going further enough than I should have. So I need to correct that. This corner is very important, right? About, it lines up with that actually. See, it's this structural mass continues straight down. There is a bunch of boulders here, so not knowing what it looks like, I'm just going to say, yeah, let's put it in there. Okay. And can't tell what's going on there. I need to see, look at the original. It's too vague in this image. So I'll come back to it. Let's get the rest of these important pieces. How am I doing the time? 3:11. Okay. Try to wrap this up soon. There's another structure right up here above this. Looks like some type of part of the wall or something, or the roof line. This roof right here below it, that continues from onto the other side. So I line it up from here, get it lined up here, and then continue. top of it. And then its edge, which falls way back here. And then it's got to come cutting back to our left vanishing point. Something going on there. I can't tell what that is. We have some slender little planes right here. I suspect that's something to do with windows. I can't tell very clearly. I'd have to see the photograph. There's this wall structure back here. Oh, it looks like some supporting here. So for clarity's sake, I need to look at the original drawing. So let's see if I can find that. I'm gonna go to canvas and see if I can 2 point. There it is. Okay, God, so much clearer. Wow. All right, you don't need to. So here we go. I can continue. Different, very different. Okay. A little trellis coming off into this direction, something like this. Line it up. Something about right about closely there at that corner comes out, then cuts back in. Doesn't come out very much. And then it's somewhat narrow. Something like that. Okay. Any questions? I think it's going to bring a little clarity is if I throw in some more masonry on this plane here, the left plane up here. And of course, sure enough, it needs to converge and follow the correct angle. I missed a little something, but I'm just going to leave it for now. And then looks like larger stone work down here. Okay. And just for clarity's sake, I could put just a little value break right here just to help matters. Doesn't have to be as dark as the underside, but that just brings a little clarity. And if I need to darken these, so be it. And I want to establish this edge right here. Where is that relative to that? A little bit off to the side. Not much at all relative to that. It's right about here. This is somewhat the equivalent of this here, but it doesn't go underneath, it goes to the side. And what's supporting it is some other structures here and here. And we do have that little stairwell going in an unusual direction, but let's just throw this in. It's quite narrow here. Something like that. And then there's a little brick wall coming in this direction further. And it stops right about there and then heads in a different direction, this direction. Okay. That stairwell, I'm going to throw that in here so you can see how I'm going to approach that. It's a little hard to see on this. You'll be able to see it on the 2-point perspective assignment. The image is right at the top. And there's this beautifully designed stairwell. It's quite stunning. Cut opening. And then it falls how far back this direction? Making a reading, this looks like about halfway to this point here. So actually right where I had it, okay, good enough. And then it cuts back in this direction. Not too far. And now cut the opening right here. Has to have some thickness, but I can't see what it is in this illustration. And now the angle of the steps are doing what? Something like this. I'm going to draw that angle. I'm going to draw it here as well. And these in reality would not be perfectly parallel, so I'm going to ever so slightly fake some convergence, and that was too much. Doesn't look real. Okay, let's go with that. Our steps. And I'm working so small, it's really hard to see all these little details. So I'm going to just put in the steps with these little converging lines here for you. How many steps are there? It's a little hard to say. This is where you want to work big so you can put in more detail. Okay. And he's got these beautiful wrought iron or steel dangling rods that support the stairwell. Okay. Simple enough. Okay. And then there's those little structures which are diagonal, but not completely. Just I'm going to draw eyeball. There's one. They're set back a bit. One here. One back here. I'm going to eyeball it. And then goes down further and further, and then goes straight down. And these are structural. And this goes back to our vanishing point. So, and this goes back to this point here. So to get an idea. 323. Okay. Any questions? Foliage. Feel free to design it as you like. It certainly would add some nice touches to this. And I do like how Frank Lloyd Wright drew his foliage. It's kind of elegant. And he simplified a lot of the tree shapes and drew them into masses. The other thing I forgot to put in were some of the masonry that, you know, they go in these vertical positions. And it's a bit irregular because this is a stone mason versus consistent brick masonry. Okay. I'm going to wrap it up at this point for this. I think this gives you plenty of to go by and help you. So I'm going to stop this recording.
This looks like a super interesting project. It's going to be fun.
Thank you.